If you're not a big fan of mushrooms, then look away now, because this is truly a celebration of mushrooms. And what I'm going to be doing is a twist on a classic. So instead of doing a meat bolognese, I'm going to be doing a mushroom bolognese with all of these gorgeous mushrooms. From field mushrooms to King Edwards, these are super meaty, enoki mushrooms and oyster mushrooms. So use a variety of mushrooms for this because you'll taste the difference. Now, all I'm going to do is roast these to get a really concentrated flavour. So I'm just going to arrange them into a baking dish here. I've preheated my oven to 190 degrees, so you want it to be quite hot. And then with these gnocchis, you can just split them. See, I'm splitting them there, and we'll leave them in clumps because you don't want them to burn. In actual fact, you kind of want to protect them, so just put them underneath these bigger, meatier varieties here. And our oyster mushrooms can go around. Now, this last mushroom, the King Edward, I'm just going to slice it into big battens. Look at that. And that can go into. Now, we need to start the flavouring of this now. So what I like to add is a really good pinch of dried chilli. Sprinkle that over. And a little bit more there. Along with some thyme, a good bunch of thyme in there. We'll separate that. A good pinch of salt. I'll also season it later. A little bit of pepper. Yum. And some olive oil just to get it started in the oven. Now, this is going to be cooking for about 25 minutes. So in it goes. Now, while that's cooking, we can get onto the base of this sauce. So one large onion here that we're just going to dice. Now for this, I've preheated a really large saute pan. This is about 30 centimetres, so we can fit all of those mushrooms in and all the sauce. You want it to be on a medium to high heat so we can start cooking off these onions. A good glug of olive oil into the pan. You know this pan is really hot because that thermo spot is bright red now, and that means we can add our onions. And usually when you're doing a base to a meat sauce or a vegetable sauce like this, you'd have some celery also, but I'm leaving the celery out. I'm just going for the carrot. And what I've done is I've grated the carrot. So just peel one carrot and then coarsely grate it. And by the end of this, you won't even see it. It's actually a good trick to do if you want to hide veggies for the kids. Now, lots of garlic for this. 4 cloves of garlic that I'm just going to roughly chop, and they'll also go in. That's great. This is going to cook down, so if there's a few little chunks in there, no problem at all. Also, I like to add a little bit of salt at this stage because that's just going to help those onions sweat and release some of the moisture in there. And this is where I add 2 anchovies. Now, if you want to make this 100% vegetarian, as I was saying before, just leave it out. I like to add the anchovy because it does emphasise the meatiness of the mushrooms and does give it that salty savouriness. So just a small amount of anchovies in there. And this dissolves. After you've chopped that, the heat is really going to melt them down. So this is going to cook now for about 10-15 minutes. Keep stirring it, keep an eye on it. I'm looking for a really soft, concentrated result for this. So by the time this is done, then the mushrooms will be almost cooked, and then I'm going to roughly chop all those mushrooms until it's in small pieces, so it almost looks like mincemeat. I prefer to chop my mushrooms after they've been roasted because when you roast them whole, they don't release as much water. And you can see that they're quite dry, not really wet. So leave them whole when you're roasting them and then chop them afterwards, just like I've done here. And I want an even more mushroomy flavour. So what I've got here are some porcini mushrooms. Now, porcini mushrooms have a really concentrated, intense mushroom flavour. These are dried and I've just rehydrated them in some warm water for about 15 minutes there. By doing that, they become really soft and the smell, I mean, so strong. And I'm just going to chop these again around the same size as the rest of the mushrooms. I haven't roasted these, not necessary. Now, don't throw away this water because that mushroom stock is going to make this bolognese extra special. Let's give this a stir. And you can see having a wide pan is important so we get a really nice, good sizzle on everything in the pan, and we can make a big batch just like this one. Now I'm going to add a bay leaf here. a fresh bay leaf, you could use a dry bay leaf, and I want to deglaze this pan with a little bit of white wine, so that can go in at this stage. Beautiful. And I'm just going to allow that to bubble away so it reduces by at least half. I'll also add in some tomato paste at this stage because that's going to give it a nice rich flavour. So stir that in and let that bubble away. Now in for our stock. Now I'm just going to strain this because there might be some sediment at the bottom. And then we can add some chopped tomato. So 2 cans of chopped tomato. So 1 and 2. And just like the original classic bolognese now, we're going to place the lid on, turn it down, and just gently cook this for about half an hour to 40 minutes. Everything is cooked, but we really want to develop the flavours. So lid goes on, heat down, and I've got a large pot of water heating up nicely so we can boil our pasta. Now my pasta is al dente, so I'm taking it off the heat, and now we can mix it. Now have a look at this mushroom ragu. Oh, it looks so good. It looks rich. If you wanted to fool the kids, then you could probably do this because it really does look like that classic bolognese. Now this is enough to feed a whole family plus a little bit of leftover, but I'm just going to serve up just 1 portion for me. I'm going to add a few big spoonfuls into the pan. And let's get some pasta. If a little bit of the water goes in, that's fine. And a few spoons in. I'm using linguine today. You could use spaghetti. Penne pasta is great too. A little bit more. Fantastic. And then I want to add some final touches to this. Some basil. I'm going to pick off a big handful of basil leaves here. I love the basil in this. And you need to have some parmesan cheese. So I'm adding some parmesan cheese straight to the pan here. And because I'm a big cheese lover, I will be adding a little bit to the top. And now, let's give this a really good stir. You want to agitate the pan here, just so that pasta is mixed in nicely with the sauce. And we'll pop it in the centre there. Yum! If you're like me and love mushrooms, you are going to adore this dish. A little bit of parmesan just on the top there. Wow, this is a new classic. Give yourself a break from meat sometimes and try a vegetarian option, but showcasing mushies. Just delicious.